I was totally unprepared for tragedy. Dave died suddenly. We had no idea. I found him. I had to tell my children, they were 7 and 10, that their father was gone. And grief, which is something I had read about but not experienced, it's an overwhelming thing. It felt like a void closing in on me. My brother-in-law described it as a boot pushing on his chest, and I had no idea what to do.
In terms of what we can do as individuals to support other people who are suffering, I remember being a little stunned by a few of the, the comments that you faced. You know, the friend who said after a year, gee, aren't you done with that grief thing by now? Or the other so-called friend who said, you're just too angry and sad, it's hard to be around you. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about what you learned about how to be a good or supportive friend.
Adam's joked that there's a whole section of self-help books, but there's no help other section. Help other section. We want our book and what we're doing with optionb.org to be in the help others section. And I realized I got a lot of this wrong before. Before I lost Dave, if someone was going through something hard, I would mention it the first time, maybe. I'm so sorry. And then I would never bring it up again, because if they wanted to talk, they should tell me, and I didn't want to remind them. That's ludicrous. You can't remind me I lost Dave. I know that. And you can't remind someone she went for chemotherapy this morning. You can't remind someone that his dad just went to jail. They know. And I'm not saying that every person will want to talk every time, but you can always acknowledge and always ask. I know you're suffering. I'm here if you want to talk. The other thing I learned was the power of not just offering to do anything, but doing something. Again, another thing I got wrong. I've said to many people, just let me know if there's anything I can do. And I meant that really kindly. I was coming from a good place, but the problem is when people said that to me, it shifts the burden to the person who needs the help to answer the question. And what do you say? Well, can you make Father's Day disappear so I don't have to live through it? Do something. My dear friends Dan and Esther Levy tragically lost a child, and they were in the hospital for many months. And a friend of his texted and said, what do you not want on a burger? A friend of mine read this book 2 weeks ago. Before it came out, I gave it to her. And she has a not close friend who has a child with leukemia, and they went back into the hospital. And she said before she read the book, she would have done nothing because she's not her best friend. How dare she impose? They're in the hospital with leukemia, but she read the book. So she went to the toy store, she bought a stuffed animal, she went to the hospital lobby, and she texted and said, I'm in the lobby in case you want this or you want to come down, but I'm leaving in 15 minutes. And the woman texted right away and said, please come up. And she gave the stuffed animal to the 4-year-old, and she said the mother was standing behind her crying, mouthing the words, thank you for showing up. You don't have to be someone's best friend from the 1st grade to show up with a burger. You don't. And you don't have to be someone's best friend to mention this. Asking is always right. It won't be the right thing to show up in all circumstances, but a lot more showing up and a lot more acknowledging would help a lot of people.
You were determined early on to make sure that you found joy. And I remember in the Facebook post you wrote, my least favorite sentence was, I will never feel another moment of pure joy again. I tried to talk you out of writing it. You wrote it anyway. You clearly should have listened to me.
I'm so often, when Adam and I disagree, he's almost always right. It's true.
I will say one of my moments of joy is proving you wrong. But in this case, I would have preferred not to have to. But I think that, you know, it was actually really interesting that you said, despite that, right, I'm going to search for joy, even though I don't believe that I'm going to find it. And you have found joy. Can you talk to us a little bit about how?
Well, it wasn't easy, and one of the sentences we write in the book that I really love is that joy is a discipline. It takes work, and it definitely takes work post-loss or grief, and it takes work for a lot of us anyway. About 4 months after Dave died, I went to a bar mitzvah, and a childhood friend pulled me on the dance floor, and we were dancing, and a minute in, I basically broke down. Kind of had to be taken outside. It's kind of embarrassing. And I didn't know what was wrong, because it felt different than the grief I had been experiencing for 4 months, and then I realized, oh my God, I was happy for 1 minute, 4 months later. And then the guilt just washed through my body, just the guilt. How could I be happy when Dave was gone? How dare I be on a dance floor? And around that time, my brother-in-law called me crying on the phone, and he said, all Dave ever wanted was for you and your children to be happy. Don't take that away from him in death. So that was the permission. I needed permission to be happy. And I gave it to my kids early. I said, Daddy would want you to play. Daddy would want you to be happy, but I hadn't given it to myself. But then the question is how? And Adam really helped me. The day after that bar mitzvah, I came here with my kids, and I told Adam how I collapsed at the dance floor. He's like, of course you did. You don't do a single thing that would make anyone happy, right?
Yeah, you're working, you're taking care of your kids, and you're writing about grief in a journal. Like, sounds delightful.
But what Adam said is that I thought happiness was going to be the big things. We think happiness so often is, getting into Penn or Wharton, getting a job, having a kid. But happiness is the daily stuff, the small stuff. And Adam said, start doing things that are more fun. Even those that remind me of Dave. I took things back. My kids and I started playing Settlers of Catan again, even though Dave and I had been playing right before he died. I started watching TV again, even though Dave and I watched TV.
Well, hold on. Sheryl Sandberg watches TV.
Yeah, I do. I used to every night, but then I didn't because it reminded me of Dave. Everything fun reminded me of Dave. So I did none of it, but I took things back. I took back Game of Thrones, even though I don't really understand it now that Dave's not there. Oh, and you all don't either. It's very confusing. Unless you read the books, which Dave did, there's no way you understand who every little character is. And they die so quickly, you can hardly remember them. I took back Scrabble. Dave played with his brother Rob. Dave and Rob played, and now Dave and I played, and now Rob and I play. But I also started noticing, Adam suggested I write down 3 moments of joy in my journal before I go to bed. And I started doing it, and I still do it. And they weren't big. Had a cup of coffee. Someone told a joke. My son gave me a hug without being asked. Maybe hinted at, but not asked. But because I was going to write them down at the end of the day, I noticed them. I was like, oh, that makes the journal. And so I savored them more. And we have to give ourselves permission, and we have to give ourselves the tools. What we focus on is what we focus on. It doesn't mean there's joy every moment. There's not. There's still a lot of grief. But there is joy now, and there is pure joy now. There are moments I am happy. And I know Dave would want me to be.